Continuing on with Unit 4, our unit on population and resource use, we're going to concentrate on renewable and non-renewable resources and energy resources for Concept 2. So first of all, we need to talk about what a resource is. Another way to describe resources is natural capital, which is basically what nature is providing for us that if we manage it appropriately, produces a natural income or goods and services that we can harvest each year and still know that we'll have enough for future generations. So, for example, a forest along a river could be natural capital. It provides goods for us each year, goods like timber. We cut down trees for wood to make paper. And then it also provides services. A lot of times we don't think of services as being part of a resource, but they protect the rivers from flooding, they keep the soil in place from eroding, and as long as we are harvesting the forest sustainably, we know that it will continue to be there each following year. Another example we can look at are tropical seas. The goods that they provide fish.
Are you on Skype?
No.
Oh, sorry.
A service provided by tropical seas would be tourism. A lot of people come to those areas to go snorkeling, scuba diving, to go to a white sand beach with blue water. That would be an example of a service. Usually, we think of products and services as having an economic value. We assign a dollar amount. It's hard to put a dollar amount or economic value on natural resources, especially on the services that they provide. For example, forests. They're a free resource. We cut them down, we use the lumber, but we don't take into account the costs. When we cut down a tree, we're losing that carbon sink. It's no longer taking carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. It disrupts the water cycle. We no longer have transpiration. It disrupts our nutrient cycles like nitrogen, phosphorus, carbon, and we lose the aesthetic value as well. Now, here's an example of where we were able to do an economic cost or measure what the dollar amount would be. The 2004 Asian tsunami caused a lot of damage to coastal areas. The coastal areas that had mangrove swamps saw a lot less damage than the areas that had their mangrove forest cut down. So what they found out was the damage was lower by as much as 90%. So they could actually figure out a dollar amount to the services provided by that mangrove forest. Now, it is harder to provide a dollar amount if we're comparing mangrove forests as wildlife habitats. What is the value of preserving biodiversity? We can't just come up with a dollar amount for biodiversity. And the reason is, it provides protections from the flooding. We cut it down, we're removing that flood buffer, but also we're destroying a habitat. Now, some types of natural capital are renewable. We're going to look at renewable, replenishable, and non-renewable. Renewable are things that are self-producing or self-maintaining. For example, solar energy. Solar energy is renewable because we can't use it up. And as long as there's solar energy and there's plants, there's photosynthesis. We can think of living species as being renewable. When we raise livestock, we might butcher some for meat, but we're going to leave enough left to have babies, and so we have food for the next year. Ecosystems are renewable. We know that they replenish themselves through succession. Renewable is something that can yield marketable goods. For example, looking at our forest once again, provides the wood fiber we use to make paper and the services such as climate regulation. As long as we are harvesting our renewable resources at a rate that is equal to or less than their productivity, then that means we'll have enough for future generations. The problem is when we use up these resources at a higher rate than sustainable yield. Replenishable natural capital are non-living resources, so that's going to be different from some of our renewables, but they're also dependent on solar energy. Groundwater can be replenished by the water cycle. The ozone layer, when we talk about atmosphere properties later on, we'll talk about the chemical process behind the production of ozone, but that's something that is constantly happening, so it's replenishable. Something that is non-renewable cannot be replenished within a human timescale, or we are withdrawing them faster than they can be replenished. So fossil fuels would be an example. Mineral resources are examples. Fossil fuels take millions of years to form, so we are using them much faster than on a million-year scale. Mineral resources are materials that naturally occur in the Earth's crust. A lot of these we mine and use for different uses, but we consider something a resource if we can mine it and process it at an affordable cost. They are non-renewable because they take so long to produce, just like our fossil fuels. So we have metallic mineral resources like iron, copper, aluminum that we use and process into various products. Non-metallic mineral resources, salt, gypsum, clay, sand, phosphates, remember we use those for fertilizer, water, soil. And we have our energy resources, our coal, oil, natural gas, uranium for nuclear power, and geothermal energy. When we mine our minerals and our resources, most of the time we take it out of the ground, we get chunks of rock that might contain some of those metals. So what we need to do is remove the rock. The rock that contains the metallic minerals are called ores. You probably heard iron ore, aluminum ore, copper ore. Any area where we have resources that we can extract, and we say extract economically, we can afford to do it using current technology. Those are called reserves. Identified resources are those that we know their location, we know how much there is, we know what quality. We also have undiscovered resources. And when we make predictions, like on things that we use, like how long will oil last at our present rate of consumption, we take into account the identified resources and also the undiscovered, those that we assume exist based on what we know about the geology of the Earth. Next week we are going to look at some of the mining strategies and techniques for withdrawing these minerals, and also how those minerals and their extraction affect habitats and the crust of the Earth.